Welcome to HalfCast number one. I am host Travis Johnson, sometimes otherwise known as Half Man, Half Philosopher, and I am joined by one Simon Haynes, a great friend of mine, engineering student, and in my opinion, culinary expert and all around delightful human being. Our topic today is when is violence acceptable or justifiable? And I will note that due to a technical issue, there are some sync issues with the audio. I apologize for that, but I thought it was enjoyable enough to share with all of you. So, without further ado, enjoy.
It helps to have rationale and to have reason to back it up, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I try to have trust in a system that I think leads to more true beliefs. And to the extent that I can be proven to not be following that system, then I hope that I can correct myself. But that takes a lot of getting away from your own ego. It's really hard to admit when you're wrong about stuff, I think it was Mark Twain who said it's easier to fool somebody than to convince somebody that they've been fooled.
Nobody wants to think of themselves as a fool.
Yeah, but if you think about it, I mean, I've almost never had a correct opinion in my life. Like, almost every opinion I ever had, I've realized over time was incorrect. I used to basically be an SJW, actually, when I was in law school, even not even that far in the past. I was like king of the SJWs at Lewis and Clark, which is the king of the SJW law schools. Things change.
Well, is that not a better measurement of intelligence than education, perhaps? The number of opinions which you've held that have changed or that you've changed because of analysis or...
Well, I think it's a sign of some kind of appropriate system, like that I have changed my beliefs. Like, if I could say that I had the same beliefs that I had in high school, I teach high schoolers, like, that's not a boat you want to still be in. Not to say that all high schoolers are dumb, but they're very naive. As I was, extremely naive.
And I mean, largely just indoctrinated, right?
Oh yeah, I mean, this could be the topic of a whole 5 hours of just how much school is for that purpose and nothing else.
Yeah.
I mean, the government has kids for, I don't know, 15,000 hours when their minds are completely malleable. If I had everybody for 15,000 hours when they were kids, I could make them believe a lot of different things. Even that having a violent mob of psychopaths ruling you is a good idea. But not to get into too deep topics, I did come up with like a few things that we wanted to talk about. Thought maybe one of the most pertinent that I happened to come across another good argument about was when is violence acceptable?
A really good topic. And something that, man, I've been thinking about like pretty much constantly for the past year.
Yeah.
And I think what brought it to a head was the Richard Spencer punching incident.
Yeah. For anybody out there who doesn't know what the internet is and is somehow listening or watching this, Richard Spencer is he wants a white ethno state, I guess. Is that what he wants? I've seen that some people have put some things in his mouth that he didn't say. I'm not saying that he's a good guy. I don't believe what he believes in, and I think he's kind of a douche. But we'll see what you think. I don't think that having appalling and pretty racist opinions still doesn't qualify you for physical violence, in my opinion. But
I was just a little bit surprised how praised not necessarily that people had negative reaction to him being punched, but how happy people were at somebody being physically assaulted because of their views, albeit perhaps skewed views.
I found it very disturbing. Like,
It
that's
is
kind of a
trouble.
line where you're always surprised. Or, I don't know, like, I thought I couldn't be surprised anymore, maybe, but I guess I didn't expect it to turn to violence so quickly in America. And then when it did, I definitely didn't expect so many people to be like, that's awesome.
Yeah.
And, like, I mean, even if I were to agree that violence were necessary, which I don't, but let's grant that I believe in the premise that he's a Nazi and that he even desires some kind of violence against other people, which I don't think is necessarily proven, but whatever, let's say that he does. I still wouldn't be happy about the prospect that it's come down to people getting hit just for saying stuff. Even if it is calling for violence or something, like, I would hope that we could even deal with that in a more constructive way. I certainly wouldn't be like, yeah, we got those motherfuckers. And, like, it's funny that I default to this, like, southern accent, which is basically the caricature that they would place on Richard Spencer. Like, the people who do violence or whatever, they tend to, I mean, I guess redneck southerners are, for some reason, the punching bag of like, intellectual inability, I guess. But
Well, I think what you're hitting at is that it's the exact same tactic that has been used against the left to, perpetrated violence, that is, against the left, and the left has rallied against. And yet, this is like an acceptable tactic in turn.
are you talking about, like, the 60s and, like, Vietnam?
Um, no, well, that too, but I was thinking about much more recent developments of right wing violence against, whether it's against people of color or just minority groups or things like that, and like any sort of violence against people for not accepting them who they are, is lauded as being horrible, like one of the most horrible things that you can do.
Absolutely.
But
I would say,
apparently,
what does that tell
opinion.
you about the left? It's horrible. Anything is horrible. I mean, about any political group, really. It's horrible when it's done to you, and it's totally acceptable if you can find a way to justify it against somebody else. I just don't think it's justifiable almost at all. I mean, I think you have to draw a pretty damn strict line with freedom of speech, because if you lose that, then you're really boned, so to speak.
Yeah.
To say it in an eloquent manner, you're totally boned, man.
Well, what is what's the like protection against hate speech in the United States? Like I think you know more about this than I do.
Hate speech? I mean, you can't. The classic example is you can't, yell fire in a theater, because that would actually cause physical harm to people who are, like, reasonably reacting to that. A reasonable my guess, I don't remember the exact details. It's been a few years, but a reasonable person who hears somebody shouting fire in a theater is likely to act in such a way that's reasonably likely to cause some kind of harm. Okay, so you can't do that. But when it comes to saying mean things, you can do that. As far as I'm aware, I mean, unless there's a state law that I'm unaware of, or it's possible that I'm getting it wrong. Like, I don't want to say I'm a huge expert anymore just because it's been so long since I was really in the thick of it. But, I mean, America goes way, 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 way beyond any other country ever when protecting free speech, which I think is a good thing. I mean, they even went out. I mean, you'd be surprised to read the Supreme Court decision that protects, like, porn and like animated porn. I mean, I would have loved to be in the room with the judges examining the evidence on that one. Just like nine like geriatric people in a room with their robes on, watching like hardcore porn. Does this cross the line? That's a real thing that happened. But they said some stuff in there that, I mean, I think there would be reasonable arguments against, but they came out and said, yeah, you have a right to do that. You have a right to film that. It's free speech. So, yeah, I mean, just saying you hate people,
But
it's not illegal.
So saying you hate people
Saying they're
is voicing
bad.
your own personal opinion, right? But what about advocating violence against a group of people?
If it's inciting imminent violence, then you can't do that.
Okay.
But, for example, I mean, there was a literal Nazi march in Wisconsin not too long ago, a couple of decades, maybe only a decade, probably 2 decades or 3 decades. And
It
the
is the
ACLU fought for
KKK
their
too.
right to do that. And they went through a Jewish neighborhood with their Nazi uniforms and swastikas, and they had every right to do that. And if they had their way, I'm sure that they would do horrible things to those people. So it seems to me you have every right to do that. And I think that's wholly reasonable, because I think it's very cynical to say we have to ban people from saying that because otherwise they're going to be convinced that that's a good idea. Like, if you believe that, then man, like, you must believe that people in general are pretty. Are people even worth saving or protecting if you're really worried that if like some people come out and there's like shouting Nazi slogans that people are gonna be like, oh, that's a good idea. Like, if you think that lowly of people, like, I mean, I don't know, like, I don't feel that way. Maybe for my own sanity, but I really don't believe people are like that. So I think the more that you shove these idiots out into the light, the more that they screw themselves by making themselves act the fool that they are. And I think that's the principle of real free speech, that you don't want to hide people's horrible opinions in the dark. You want to show it to everybody so that they can see just how shitty it is. But you have to have a fundamental belief in the goodness of people in order to believe in that principle.
Or I think more specifically, the belief in the rational ability of people. Right?
Possibly, but people could be rational and evil.
Yeah.
So maybe perhaps rational and morally good, at least trying to be morally good.
Wow, that's quite the assertion there, Travis. That people are rational and generally good.
Yeah, absolutely. People think I'm so cynical, and in a way I am, but actually I'm way less cynical than communists or a lot of leftist people who seem to view everybody as really just like waiting for some kind of like spark to ignite their evil racist ways. I don't believe people are like that. I think generally people act in their own best interests, and to the extent that they can do it in a voluntary win-win interaction, they will. Not everybody. There are psychopaths in the world, and there are people who are too damaged by horrible parenting and school to be able to do that. But I think in general, it's in people's nature to cooperate. I mean, I don't think we would have made it this far were we not that way.
I think it's worth noting that while you talked about the leftist crowd, that's also the view of the Randian crowd, is that people are generally parasites, is the word that she uses in Atlas Shrugged, and that they're generally unable to make those decisions for themselves. And I think that's the philosophy that, for instance, like Paul Ryan has pretty much voiced. In that
Paul Ryan's nothing but a two-faced fuck. He doesn't have any real beliefs that weren't given to him. But I mean, as to Ayn Rand, maybe she was a cynical person. As I said, I haven't read all of
super cynical person. Yeah.
And I can understand having fled Soviet Russia when her parents were getting hunted down for being successful. I can see why she would hold the view that people are parasites who want to take everything from the productive people and for themselves because they're parasites, because that was her literal experience of life.
Yeah.
Now, like, what system gave rise to that? It wasn't freedom, it was
No.
communism. So I think,
Well, it was socialism, not.
sure.
I think.
Well, as
I think
Vladimir
it's
Lenin
worth.
said, and I think he was an expert, socialism is just a step on the way to communism.
Right.
And uh, I think the imposition of force on that grand of a scale sort of necessarily corrupts people's hearts. Like, I see things in a very diametric kind of way where basically the state, which is a monopoly on violence, that's all it is that defines it from any other organization, is the edifice of evil in this world. And to the extent that the state has power, it corrupts people into using that power. It's the ring. And the more people try to use the government and use that power, the more they become beholden to using violence against other people. Whereas in a system of absolute freedom, yeah, you can't force other people to do anything, but what does that require you to do except cooperate with other people? Because you don't get very far in a world full of other people by yourself if you're just a total ass.
But I mean, how we're getting a little bit off the track, off the rails here. I think.
It is a little bit in the weeds. Let's bring it back to just when is violence acceptable?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I don't think it was acceptable against Richard Spencer. How about you?
Um. My initial reaction was to follow the crowd of people that I'm surrounded by, which is to say, hell yeah, punch those Nazis, because it's like there's something exhilarating about that, to have a direct like enemy, to have.
Yeah,
It's
man.
easy. It's easy to want to have like a real bad guy that exists in the world,
Yeah.
because so much of our mythos is dependent on that, and we're told that story like from birth. You
Yeah.
know that there are literal bad people, and that they have to be slain down. That's
Yeah.
the goal of the hero, is to kill the bad guy. Um, I,
Well, yeah,
I
humans' evolution and survival was dependent on being able to dehumanize other people, call them an enemy, and destroy them. So, yeah, I mean, that's really built into us.
I mean, can you think of a story that ends with the hero confronting the bad guy, sitting down for a nice chat, and telling him why he's wrong?
Fallout.
Well, okay. And as I'm saying that, I'm thinking of Jean
Really, like a mythical
Luc
story. Yeah.
Um,
I'd have
I
to.
think
I'd have to
that
give that one a
does
good thing.
exist in the Star Trek mythos a little bit.
The Next Generation, man, it's the best show
Yeah,
ever.
yeah. I mean, Picard does that.
Yeah.
He sits the bad guy down and says,
Yeah.
"Don't do this anymore. This is why."
Yeah, I just watched the Drumhead again recently, where they have the kangaroo courts because they think there's a spy on the Enterprise.
Mm-hmm.
When the first link is forged, when the first person's rights are trammeled, all of us are weakened. And it's a pretty relevant quote to Spencer, I would say, or in this general topic, because my problem with what's being done is, okay, you say these people are Nazis, which I think is a very dubious claim, but whatever. But A, who's making the judgment as to who is a Nazi? I mean, it seems to me like almost, if you're on the far left, it seems like almost everybody who's right of Che Guevara is a Nazi. Like, so what? You're allowed to basically just attach this label. Who attaches label? You personally? Are you the arbiter of reality that can decide what's in someone else's heart? No, that's absolutely ridiculous and egotistical and probably solipsistic. But And so you're just going to attach this label to somebody and say it's okay to hit them and say that their words are violence, but my hitting them with a brick is not. It's totally the reverse of reality. It's upside down world to me.
I do wonder how it's justified to. I mean, I suppose it's a mirror of what our state does in saying that violence is an acceptable solution to stop violence from happening.
Which inevitably it just creates more.
Of course, like it's what was the there's a really great like Vietnam era sign that I'm trying to remember that is exactly on point with this. That it'll come to me.
If we find a picture on the internet, I'll flash it on the little thing here. Post.
Okay.
But it's like physics, man. You can't. I mean, fighting fire with fire is very cliche, but you can't expect that to end in water.
Yeah. So, is it ever acceptable to perpetrate violence?
I mean, I'm a pretty strong adherent to the non-aggression principle, which is to say, unless I've been attacked or I am literally, I mean, and this is where it's going to come down to, like, somebody is about to hit me. You know, I have a right to defend myself in that case. Before that point, no, I would say it's not justified to initiate force. Now,
and I think the Antifa argument to that would be that Spencer is advocating violence and they do feel an imminent threat from him.
What is imminent? He's never done violence. He's not giving people weapons. He's not himself doing anything. How many degrees of removal are you willing to go to justify hitting people? I mean, maybe this time you're hitting a real Nazi who has the bad intentions, but maybe the next guy, not so bad. He's about to become a Nazi. You can see he's reading the books. He's about to become a Nazi. I mean, why not hit him? And then his brother could be influenced. Maybe why don't you get him too? I mean, and it's not as though hitting them is going to change their opinion. I think
that's the core of it right there.
If you're going to go resort to violence, I don't see any rational way that you could end and not just killing them. Because there's no way to prevent them from having that opinion and attempting to spread it, which is apparently what you want to prevent, unless you literally destroy them. Because your violence will only strengthen their view that they're right. So I think it's counterproductive. That would be the most critical counter argument to doing it. And unless you're willing to kill them. And I wouldn't do that. I think there are a fair amount of people who believe that that is what they should do. And they're waiting for an excuse.
Yeah.
That's what scares me. And it is going to happen soon. They're already hitting people with bike locks. And that could kill you.
Oh, definitely.
So,
I mean, you could get punched, fall down and hit your head on the pavement wrong and definitely die.
Yeah, so that's what's worrisome is when somebody finally dies here, like, I don't know. I mean, hopefully it doesn't like super seriously escalate, but I don't see how it would.
And I don't see it being any different from the hell yeah punch a Nazi thing. Like, I mean, once somebody dies, I don't think it would really change the opinion of people who would advocate for that. Like, I think
they would be more.
They would be soaked on
fervent on it, I think.
Yeah.
And I mean, we're literally, this is Weimar Germany, or at least it's a weird facsimile almost of Weimar Germany, where there's definitely communists, and they think they're fighting Nazis. I don't think that the people they're fighting, at least to a significant degree. I think most of them are not Nazis, but
I mean,
it's becoming battles in the streets, which is very reminiscent of Weimar Germany. I don't think we're quite at that point yet, but it's like a weird echo after image.
Berkeley might.
Maybe. They seem to be genuinely just communists. Well, although I think a lot of them are. Most of them are, maybe. Antifa seems to be communists.
I think there's while they may claim to expound on the ideas of communism, I'm not really sure that everybody really understands what that entails.
I think, I mean, if you go back to what schooling is these days, how much do you think people learn about the 20th century? Like, people learn Lincoln freed the slaves, we won World War II, Hitler killed the Jews, and then maybe those are the only things that they learn. I don't. Did you learn? I don't think I learned, except by my own independent interests, that Stalin killed many times more people than Hitler, and that Mao Zedong. How many people know anything about Mao and how horrifying that is? What, like 60 million people? And like, it's exactly the same thing every time. Like, I mean, they cause social divide, whether it's the bourgeoisie and the workers or whatever, and they've just kind of morphed it this time into minority groups versus each other. They divide everybody, and then they have a big war, and the elites come out on top.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that that's the only outcome of socialism. I differ with you on that. And I would talk about the Basque region of Spain and how those socialist operations have been successful in instigating worker-owned operations, and even into heavy industry, where workers rotate in terms of being part of the production floor and management, and the distribution of wealth is something closer to 1 to 3 than the 1 to 30 or whatever we have in this country.
Okay, but there's nothing inherently socialist about that. I think you could do that as a company in a capitalist system. There's absolutely, in fact, is that not a capitalist system? Socialism just means the government has control of it.
But
unless the government is forcing them to do that, I guess that would be socialist.
I think it's more akin to communism in the Marxist sense than socialism per se, because it's not government owned; it's worker owned.
Well, you can set up a company right now in any capitalist country and say that the workers own it. There's nothing preventing you from doing that.
It's true, but they operate in a more or less unified system of that, where that's the prevailing quality, right?
Okay. I'm just saying that's not capitalism. It could be better. It could be that capitalism would work better that way. I mean, if America is a far, far way away from capitalism, it's more socialist/communist than capitalist at this point. So
I can agree with that.
I mean, to say that we have any idea of how a real free market would work at this point, I mean, I don't know. It would probably be amazing to see what this kind of technology would do if the government didn't have its octopus tendrils and squid ink all over it. But I mean, I don't know. I can't say for sure. But I can only speculate. I'm just saying there's nothing anti-capitalist about workers owning things. In fact, that is capitalism. Under communism, the workers don't really own anything. You can call it that, but actually the government owns everything, and they tell you exactly what's going to go on with you and the property.
Well, I think that depends on whose system of communism you're talking about.
Well, what I mean is that capitalism is the idea that all property is private, that the government does not own property. And communism is the opposite of that, and socialism is something in the middle of that. That's what I mean. I prefer to define them in economic ways rather because that is more to the actual result than whatever somebody says they mean about it. Because you can say a lot of things, but the inevitable result of communist systems is that the government owns everything, and at least the initial idea of capitalism is the opposite of that. So it could be that, like, I think it's true that what a lot of people talk about as communism or socialism is in fact a circle within the Venn diagram of capitalism, but the definitions have been so conflated, probably intentionally, in order to confuse people into believing that they hate capitalism. That's my opinion.
Do you think that the true Marxist ideal is actually ANCAP?
Could be.
I mean, I don't think it'd be too far off the mark for him.
Yeah, I mean, but Marx had a lot of that class hatred thing. Like, I think a lot of communism and these kind of systems comes down to just preying on people's deep-seated envy of other people, regardless of what it's for.
Or need to create the bad guy.
Yeah, and have an enemy, you know?
And have an enemy, yeah.
So it's very powerful in that way, and I think its power is more in that than the economics. I think they lost the economic argument a long time ago.
Yeah, for sure.
I think that it just, I mean, I hate to say it, I just think it's kind of a mind virus that preys on people's emotional desire to, like, and really primal desire to have an enemy and to feel victimized, to feel that you're the victim of other people's oppression, as they call it, which I think is a really sad thing, because I think that people who feel that they're victims don't think that they have anything to gain by trying not to be. Because if you're just going to be held down by the man no matter what you do, then why would you do anything, right?
Well, you would fight the man.
Yeah, sure. But if it turns out that the man is
just another guy?
Yeah, exactly. A guy who may in fact be trying to help you.
Do you think that's why the SJW thing is so popular in America right now? The, like, sense of desiring to be a victim?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
I mean, it seems like that's kind of at the core of what it means to be a leftist advocate, or however, even to get away from the SJW label.
Yeah, and I think that's really, it's sad and pretty despicable in that I think it's harmful to all these people, because, like I said, if you believe that you're a victim, then you feel that you're boxed in somewhere where I don't think you necessarily. And even if you were a victim, focusing on that part of your life wouldn't make it better. You know?
Yeah. I mean, but punching a Nazi does make a lot of people feel better in the moment, especially when they have a crowd of people around them applauding them for their actions.
Yeah, I mean...
But again, this is kind of playground level childish. Feeling better because you pantsed the other guy.
Yeah, it's playground level childish, but there's also people tossing, like, M80s around and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a worrying thing, man. I want to go back to America in a way. Like I care about America actually. I'm an anarchist, but I like American culture. I want to
Yeah.
kind of be around to do something about it. At the same time, I'm a little scared to go back. Like sometimes, like, do I really want to go back into that? Who knows where it's going?
Well, are you? Is that coming from a place of fear, from your personal safety, or
Well, I mean, were I ever successful in saying the things that I want to say, I'm sure it would become dangerous for me on a personal level. But well, I mean, I guess it's personal safety. I mean, just in a general sense, I'm worried that some kind of economic upheaval, very like really serious economic upheaval, is on the way, and I don't know what's going to go on there. I would be ill prepared if it did happen. Maybe it won't. It seems like they're being able to delay it forever, so maybe it won't happen anytime soon. Maybe it will. There's that, but also just it seems like, I mean, I'm not there. It just seems like things are going to like civil war or something right now.
it certainly feels like it's heading in that direction in some ways, and I can't imagine what it would have been like to be a northerner and voice the opinion that perhaps we don't have a right to tread on their opinion of what states' rights should be.
Yeah,
Like, I mean, that would be seems like that would be fair ground for lynching yourself.
yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point.
So,
And man, like
and
Portland.
are people? I think people are as willing today as they were in probably less than in the 1860s to have a rational discussion about things. I mean, if our presidential debates are any indication, people are not willing to talk about issues.
Yeah, man. In like 20 years, it's gonna be hand puppets and like dances. I'm gonna have to come up with a good pretend a hand puppet presidential debate. I think that would be good entertainment value. But yeah, people were way smarter 100 years ago.
I
Way,
think,
way smarter. Like if you look at a newspaper from back then, oh my god, they're so eloquent,
yeah,
so eloquent. And now like journalism is like a guy who heard a thing, and then like he's reporting about other people's tweets.
and the article is 700 words long
Yeah,
because
it took
people
all
don't
the
have the attention
focus.
span
Yeah, it took all the
to.
focus in that poor journalist to get that many words down. And I'm guilty of that too. My focus has really dropped off in the past few years. While I was in law school, I was forced to read all the time, which is good. I'm trying to reverse my habits, which is good. Off the sauce, jogging every day, reading, all that kind of stuff. But I can see why average Joe Blow, man, I don't got time for that shit.
Yeah,
And the internet gives you information like fucking crack.
just one small hit at a time.
Yeah, man. Doesn't matter if it's good for you. Doesn't matter.
It's big, but it's very appealing. There's something so addicting to that, and I've fallen victim to that as well.
Dude,
And
I realized, I'm sorry to interrupt, but that reminds me of something. When I was in law school, I would be in class and I used to be like scrolling through like Gizmodo and Jezebel, if you could believe that, and all these other like, what's their parent? Oh, their old parent company. They went out of business because the Hulk body slammed them with a lawsuit. I forgot. Gawker? No, Gawker? Maybe Gawker. Anyways, it's like websites of pure clickbait.
yeah,
Just like line after line of clickbait, and like I'm a pretty smart guy, but even
yeah,
I like that's what I was doing in law school. like in class, at times I was like looking at clickbait, and like
Yeah.
looking back at that now, I'm just like, damn, like even I was just like totally caught up in that, and it's a little bit surreal.
Well, it takes a lot more work to separate yourself from that than it does to fall into it.
Yeah,
It's so easy to get that constant roll of clickbait and like 700 word Facebook articles and um,
yeah, it's like
quick one
drinking.
off Reddit links with no content. With no content.
Literally no
If
content.
it is content, it's just even if it's about political stuff, it's the equivalent of celebrity gossip.
Yeah, which almost is political speak these days.
Uh,
There's like
it's hard to separate the two. I mean, I can't remember the last like actual discourse that I've seen put out by an American publication about the political sphere in this country.
yeah, or like actual policies.
Yeah, I read Economist from time to time at school, and while
Globalist
I
run,
might
I'd rather read The Economist than internet news.
and I think I disagree with their internal politics a lot of the time, but at least it's a goddamn article that makes sense.
Yeah, and there's like usually information and data.
There's an argument.
Yeah,
And in fact,
there's an actual argument in it. It's not just like some guy saying a thing or commenting about another guy saying a thing.
ex-politician is a smelly pile because he advocates this.
He's a big doo-doo head, and you can't like doo-doo heads, and all the people associated with him are doo-doo heads, and we're not doo-doo heads. We're totally awesome, cool people. So don't like the doo-doo heads. They're bad, and they smell like poop.
And it's okay to punch them.
Yeah. A little smelly, though. Well, hey, you probably got to go to class soon, right?
Yeah, I should get on my bike and ride. Gotta let the chickens out and.
Yeah, I gotta go to bed soon. So.
Cool, man. Let's do this again soon.
Yeah, it's been good. If you come up with any more cool topics, let's do it.
Yeah, definitely.
Cool. I love you, man.
Have
a good day at school.
All right, thanks.